Good morning. In what has to be very good news for lakhs of MSMEs across the country, the government is likely to come up with changes in the insolvency proceedings. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had put a moratorium on such proceedings for a year, but what has now been decided is that should the MSMEs want to approach the bankruptcy courts, they can. All proceedings will be completed within 90 days. And most important, if they are not willful defaulters, the owners of these MSMEs will be allowed to bid for their very own companies. Now there's one issue here that we've been raising for a while. I'd like to flag it again, which is that ideally this bid should not be sealed envelope bids. There should be an open system whereby if anybody makes a bid, the next person gets 24 hours to counter it. This is important because in a sealed envelope situation, it is very possible that the owners of MSMEs could see themselves being outbid and they can then lose control of their companies. After decades of acrimony, work finally began on the construction of the Ram Mandir at Ayodhya, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi going there for a special function and laying the first brick for the temple. Modi drew a parallel between the freedom struggle and the fact that for centuries, Hindus across the country have been trying to rebuild the temple after the Babri Masjid came on top of the Hindu structure. Interestingly, many of those who opposed the construction of the temple at that point, such as those in the Congress party, came out with tweets or statements yesterday extolling the virtues of Lord Ram and expressed happiness that the temple was finally getting constructed. CRISIL has forecast that thanks to malls and theatres being shut for so many months during the pandemic, it is likely that the sector will see a 50% fall in this current year. Frankly, that seems a bit of an overestimate because even now that malls have been opened, you find very few footfalls there. So, 50% seems to be an underestimate, at least at this point in time. Global coronavirus deaths have crossed 7 lakhs. And in this context, we published the full speech of Tata Group Chief N. Chandrasekaran, where he talks about how exactly 100 years ago, we had the Spanish flu. And while in the Spanish flu, there were 20 to 50 million deaths globally, Mr. Chandrasekaran makes the point that his very own group, the Tata Group, actually set up 3 big enterprises during that period. So the point that he's making, which is a valid one, that no matter how trying the situation is, there are always opportunities to be got when people are brave. So he's exhorting industry to be brave, to try and figure out solutions and opportunities that we can get from the coronavirus. Of course, the biggest lesson here is for the government because, as he puts it, digitization is one way that India can very quickly grab the future and improve its standing, whether it comes to health or education. Now that is completely up to the government as to whether it chooses to do that or not. Our 2 editorials today, in fact, endorse this very message by the Tata Group Chief N. Chandrasekaran on the scope for digitization and the scope for finding opportunity even within the corona crisis. Of course, as the other story on the front page, the story about JSW Steel makes it very clear that investing is not as easy as it seems when you're already stretched. JSW made a 19,350 crore winning bid for Bhushan Power, but the company has not been able to make the payment. While the bankers are asking JSW to make the payment, the company is arguing that there is an enforcement directorate case against Bhushan Power which needs to be resolved first. But the issue really is that even if that case gets sorted out soon, will the company be able to raise 19,300 crore rupees in these times when its balance sheets are already stretched? Interestingly, as we report today, the Industry Ministry is holding a series of meetings trying to find out ways to spur investment in manufacturing in what they call champion sectors. Now, there's no harm in the meeting, but as we said before, what is very strange is that most people in the government already know what needs to be done. We've seen, where all the government policy is very unfriendly, and it's pretty easy to fix that. So it's not quite clear what these meetings are about. Unless they're just to make the DPIIT officials feel fruitfully occupied. That's all for today. Have a great day. Thank you.